All three readings of today focus on what it means to be a disciple of Jesus. If in the first reading, Paul includes Gentiles as those who are also called to be disciples, in the gospel text, Jesus speaks of disciples as those who listen to the voice of the shepherd. The second reading speaks of showing in action rather than words that one is a disciple. And this is from the book of Revelation. The final verse of the gospel text of today, the Father and I are one, summarizes beautifully what discipleship means. It explicates and explains the relationship of Jesus and God, but as well as the relationship of the disciples with Jesus. The oneness which Jesus shares with God is acted out in the whole gospel. Jesus speaks God's words, he does God's deeds, and he makes God known as no other before him had ever done. Jesus is thus the manifestation, the revelation of God's unconditional and eternal love for the world. God sent Jesus and gave him to the world to show, on the one hand, that God would hold nothing back from the world, and to show, on the other hand, that it was possible for every human being who encountered Jesus in any way to share the same relationship which Jesus shared with God, because Jesus had made this relationship so open and so accessible. In Jesus, the world was able to witness who God really is and what God is like. Disciples of Jesus who walk the same path can also reveal Jesus, and so in their revelation of Jesus, they reveal God. This revelation of Jesus is what Paul invites the people in the synagogue to do. However, here, like in the case of the voice of Jesus, there is no coercion, there is no pressure, there is no force from without. The response has to be from within, and the response has to be free. Like the sheep who hear the voice of Jesus and follow him, the people in the synagogue must decide if they are willing to follow. Since those to whom the voice was first addressed reject the shepherd, others are invited to follow. Thus, it is not primarily external identification marks that will determine a disciple, rather, one who shows in action that he or she wants to follow. Actions, as they say, speaks louder than words, and our faith, our belief, what we verbally proclaim has to be lived out in our lives. This action is narrated in the second reading from the book of Revelation, which speaks of those who dared to follow unconditionally and had to pay their price for standing up to the truth. These people are from every nation, every tribe, and every language, which is a clear indication that discipleship is not exclusive nor determined by one's background, but by having the courage to follow the truth, even in the face of challenges, even in the midst of odds. These are the ones who have undergone all kinds of persecution and maltreatment and have persevered. They have shown, not only in words, but also in actions, what it means to be a disciple of Jesus. They have been obedient to the voice of the Good Shepherd, They have listened to that voice attentively and they have followed that voice. Thus, the discipleship as brought out in the readings of today is not merely a matter of saying, Lord, Lord. It concerns living out this confession that I make. To live out such a confession means to live as Jesus did and to manifest God as Jesus did. The unique way in which Jesus revealed God is as unconditional forgiveness and love. A forgiveness which keeps no condition whatever. This is why the God whom Jesus revealed is not a God who needs merely external worship and praise, but a God who looks at the heart, who looks at what is within. This is because it is a God who loves first, not a God who wants us to love him, but we love him because he loved us first. God does not need one to do anything to gain that love, because it is a love given gratis, a love given freely. One cannot acquire or merit such a love or ever be worthy of it. One cannot earn such a love. However, one can show that this love given freely has been received and accepted if one dares to share this love with others. The sharing is a revelation and a confirmation that the love which God gives has been received in one's heart. This sharing of love was what the incarnation, mission, life, death, and resurrection of Jesus was all about. Jesus realized that the best way, the most tangible way, the most practical way to show God's love for the world was through becoming an integral part of creation. In Jesus, this love reached the highest point and was manifested as pure, unadulterated love. It was a love that was shown not only when things were going well, but also a love that was given when the love was rejected, as is evident when Jesus was on the cross. The multitude from every nation, tribe, and language that followed the Lamb realized this. And this is why they too were able to go through the great ordeal and withstand all kinds of persecution. Thus, like Jesus, they too revealed God, and thus, like Jesus, they too were able to see the face of God and stand before God. The world today is hungering for such a love. There is too much of hate, indifference, apathy, and coldness. There is too much of parochialism and separation. There is too much of one group against another. There is too much of selfishness and self-centeredness. Those of us who profess to be disciples of Jesus are challenged through the readings of today to bring about this change that is needed. We have to dare, like Jesus and the first Christian community, to first open our hearts to receive that unconditional forgiveness and love which God wants to pour into it. And then we need to share that love with others to show that we have indeed received that love. When we do this, when we make no distinction between nation, race, tribe, and language, when we do not discriminate between them and us, then we are invited to partake of that gracious love of God made manifest and revealed in Jesus. With you, who profess to be a disciple of Jesus, share that love with at least one person outside of your family today.